So at what point did the rapping start to come about?
Right after that.
Right after that?
Immediately. Like immediately.
Okay.
Immediately. So I was always with my homeboys from my neighborhood cruising and, you know, hitting boulevards, like I said, in the situation. That was a norm for me. We were always doing that, whether it was Bristol and Orange County, Hollywood Boulevard, Whittier Boulevard. We would hit anywhere, all the way in Riverside, Magnolia. There used to be a spot called Club Metro. We were everywhere cruising 24/7. And I used to rap everywhere I would go. And my homeboy would tell me, like, man, I'm going to introduce you to the homie Capone. Like, the homie Capone, my homeboy from my neighborhood was cousins with one of his homeboys from his neighborhood named Little Dreamer. So he's like, yeah, we're going to plug you up with him. He's doing this little independent thing. I got locked up again. And this was like when I was 17 or something, 16, they were telling me that. And I got locked up again because Capone CD came out when I was like 16, 17. And I knew the opportunity was there for me, you know? So when I turned 18, it was like, man, they were going to have a car show somewhere close to where I was living. And my homeboys like, we're gonna roll up, and they were just like on the regular, like, we're gonna go cruise and kick it. I already had it in my mind. Like I literally told my family that day, like I told them when I left the house, like, I'm gonna come back with a record deal.
Okay, and I guess on your way to this car show, your homie wanted to bring the tech.
Nah, that was me.
Oh, that was you?
That was me.
Oh,
yeah.
You wanted to bring the
yeah, there was a lot of heat back then where I used to stay. I used to leave literally in my girlfriend's house everywhere I go. She's my wife now. But, you know, my wife's seen it all. I would put Uzis in her dresser when I was like 12, 13 years old, and because she stayed across the street from a park. And there's some dudes over there I didn't really get along with, and I used to beat up, and they'd trip on my homies, and whenever I'd come out from being in jail, I'd beat the shit out of them or, you know, fuck up their rides and shit. I was always a problem, so they knew when I would come around, like, it was an issue, so I always had to be strapped up. So Tech 9s, Mac 11s, a whole nine in her house. So I was leaving to the car show from her crib. And I remember I grabbed the Tech 9 30-round clip, and I was hopping in, and my homeboy's like, wait a second, you ain't getting in that shit with me today and that? And I was like, why? The car shot's hot as fuck. There's gonna be cops everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I was talking
and they have metal detectors at the door and stuff like that.
Well, no, because I wasn't ever trying to go on the show. We
just okay. Just cruising around. Okay.
Flexing on fools, banging on fools, just trying to run into the homies, you know? And yeah, he's like, you ain't taking that. And I remember we argued for like 2 minutes. I remember my homeboy Nino was in the back seat laughing. I'm like, fuck that, I ain't even gonna go. Somehow I ended up jumping in, and sure enough, as soon as we got off the freeway, K9s ripping our cars apart, the whole nine. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got 4 guys that look like you. You know what I mean? It's like easy pickings.
Yeah.
For the police. I mean, because I'm sure you were getting pulled over all the time.
Left and right. Left and right.
But yet you would still pack a gun.
Had to, man. It's better to get caught with it than without it, you know?
Right, but here you are, a repeat offender, a repeat felon, rolling around with guns.
It was stupidity at the time, but it was the only way of survival I knew. I mean, one of my homeboys had just got smoked like 3 weeks before that. I wasn't trying to be that next statistic.
Okay. Tech 9, is that fully automatic or is that semi?
It's semi.
Semi.
This one was a semi.
A 30-round clip.
Luger. I still remember the name of the brand, yeah.
Had you had that gun in your car, unregistered gun, with a guy with a bunch of felonies on his record, you just beat almost 12 years, you would have shown up in that judge's room again and it would have been over.
It would have been a different situation because I was an adult now. I was no longer a kid. So it's like now I would have went straight to the pen. They wouldn't have given no shit about any of the previous stories I had before. It's like, you're an adult with a Tech 9, take your ass to jail. You know?
How long do you think you would have gotten, if you were to guess?
For that, I think it would have been a lot more. It's a difference in counties, something about I've experienced in counties. We used to get caught up in my neighborhood, like around East LA, Hollenbeck Division, Rampart Division with guns all the time. And my homeboys will pop back up in like 2 weeks back in the neighborhood. Like, yeah, you know, I got busted with a strap. Like, yeah, it's another one on my record. Like, if you got caught where I was living in Riverside or San Bernardino County, them fools would go straight to prison. Like, that, it was a different system. I think the influx of like how many people were getting caught up in LA compared to the Inland Empire was a lot different. So I truly believe that if I would have got caught that day, I would have did a couple years in prison.
So you link up with Mr. Capone?
That day.
Did you have any music with you or anything else like that?
I had never recorded nothing in my life.
You were just freestyling?
Freestyling.
But he actually saw something in you?
Well, he had, like I told you, he had that record label already going, and he was already putting it out. So on the back of his CD, he had a hotline. So I remember very clearly, I remember this day like it was yesterday. I was in my pad with a couple of my homeboys, and they were like saying, man, you ain't gonna rap, dog. You ain't gonna ever rap, you know, like kind of doubting me, teasing me. And I remember I picked up the phone, I was like, watch this. And I called his number and I like straight did a whole banging my hood rhyme on this thing. And as soon as I met him, as soon as I jumped in the limo, he's like, he literally had on his glasses. He took off his glasses. He's like, you're the one that left that voice in there, huh? And I was like, yeah. He had a big old smile. He's like, come through, man. Get in this bus, you know. And he didn't want to let me go after that. He was like, my homeboys were trying to leave. He's like, hey, keep Criminal right here, you know. So it was a dope thing.
Okay. And why the name Mr. Criminal?
I used to be the one. I used to be the one every time. Anytime there was a situation, we need to go get a G ride for something, and I hear my homeboys arguing about it. I'd be like, man, shut up. I'm gonna go get that. You know, somebody's like, oh yeah, we got information on where this cop stays, and there's like 5 straps in the pad. I'll be the first one to go break in and go take them 5 straps. I had such a reputation of being down and raising my hand right away for any situation like that. The homies used to just be like, man, that's Criminal. We're gonna call him Criminal. You know.
So you were Mr. Criminal before you started rapping?
Not Mr., just Criminal.
Oh, just Criminal.
Yeah, they just called me Criminal. Mr. got added in the rap game.
Okay. Why do you think you were the one that was always willing to do that?
I just always wanted to like prove myself. I don't know what it was. I was very hyperactive, and I always wanted to be like the one that was like, I wanted to be the best at anything I do. You know what I'm saying? No matter what it was. If it was like playing basketball, I wanted to be the best. If it was playing football, I wanted to get picked first. You know, same thing, man. We were banging. We're out there causing crimes up to no good. I wanted to be the one that had the most reputation for doing the most, you know?
Well, you put out your first album in 2003.
Yes, sir. 2002.
2002, sorry. Mm-hmm. And that was through Mr. Capone-E's label.
Yes, sir.
And I guess right around that time is when he signed his deal with Universal.
Yes, it was.
So it actually came out under the Universal umbrella.
Yes, it was.
At that point, you had never been to the studio or anything?
Never in my life.
So Capone threw you in the studio with some beats.
Yes, sir.
Did it take you a while to kind of get in the swing of things?
Nah, our first song that we recorded was On a Come Up, which is like a underground Chicano rap classic. It was pretty much what set off my career. I did On a Come Up with him back and forth. The only things that were like, I remember the engineer like, yeah, man, you're gonna have 8 bars here and then do a full 16. And I remember looking at my homies like,
what's that?
What the hell is he talking about? But I didn't even ask. I didn't want to feel stupid. But because I was so into music, like, I'm a little bit more than the average. Like, I've been that kid that's always loved music, always memorized everything, always recorded with the tape, putting, tape or paper into the tape cassette so you could record whatever was on the radio. I already knew what the structure was, even though I didn't know the number. I had an idea, okay, like when this sound comes in, that's when the hook comes in and everything. So I knew, like, he didn't even have to say nothing, but I played dumb, like, okay, and I had no clue what the hell they were talking about.
Right. And Chicano rap has an interesting history in LA. I mean, Kid Frost was probably the first one that set it off with La Raza.
Mainstream, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was underground. Like my favorite Chicano rapper is Be Real.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
I think he's Mexican and Salvadorian or something.
I think Cuban.
Is it Cuban? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot what it was. But I'm a huge Cypress Hill fan.
That's what's up. Yeah. That's the homie.
And then you had like Lighter Shade of Brown, you had Lil Rob, and it's always, I think Cypress Hill was the only one that really went
to the next level.
To like a platinum level. Everyone else has sort of stayed somewhat underground.
Very true.
Well, why do you think that, so many of these groups don't reach that mainstream level?
Well, first of all, I don't consider Cypress Hill Chicano rap realistically. I mean, I know they're brown skinned, but they say like nigga in their raps, and they represent themselves a little more hip hoppy and a little bit more like urban, like black style.
I'll give you that.
The cornrows, the whole nine. Like, we don't rock like that. So I think that helped play into their success as well, because they weren't in a box. You know what I'm saying? It's just like Chicano rap, or just like that cholo image. You know what I'm saying? I just think it basically just takes a lot of work, man, and it takes whatever the mainstream is going to feed into. And at the end of the day, they tapped into something that the mainstream liked at that point. You know what I'm saying?
And, I mean, and DJ Muggs with the beats was a beast.
Hard as hell, yeah.
And Be Real had a flow that no one really had
very
before.
Unique, very unique.
The high pitched kind of nasally flow. But here you are, essentially fresh off the block. You record your album. You record these songs and you start doing shows. How much of a shock was it to suddenly have all these people know your lyrics and be on stage and everything?
It was a shock for sure. I mean, I remember my very first car show. we went there, and I remember thinking like, man, ain't nobody gonna know who I am. I remember Capone telling me like, here's a couple boxes of CDs, you gotta, try to get these sold. And I'm thinking, damn, this dude believes in me to put my face on a CD. Like, I almost thought like, man, what's he doing? He's gonna lose money. I ain't gonna sell these. Like, nobody knows who the hell I am. We hit the show, and I sold all 300 of them. Came back with like 3 racks. I was like, man, this is a lot better than selling dope or doing shit in the streets. Like, we could do this legally, and it was an eye opener right away. It was a shock too, because like I was like, man, people actually want to buy. Never even heard of me just because of this movement that this man created, and it was a dope thing.
Was that your first legal money?
Yeah, I would say. Well, my mom she was the first Latina in the whole United States to have a employment agency at the time.
Oh, dope.
She retired in 2008, went out of business like in 2008, but. Nah, when I was like a kid, trying to get in and out of trouble, she'd send me to like warehouse jobs. Go work at Douglas Battery. Go be in the warehouse and shit. So I'd walk off after a day or something. It wasn't for me, but yeah, I got a couple checks here and there, like being a kid working.
But consistently, this was your first real,
absolutely.
legitimate,
Absolutely.
non-crime related,
Absolutely.
legal job.
Yes, sir.
Did it feel a little bit different?
It felt way different. It felt good. It felt good. It felt like I could do something positive. Even back then, it was like, man, this is beautiful,
Well, as you're doing your music, and I guess you've released what, like 24 albums or
something crazy.
Something crazy
Yeah.
like that. You start releasing more and more music, and you have fans approaching you that are now dressed like you, wearing the same kind of shirts that you're wearing on your album covers and stuff like that. And they're telling you some of the crimes that they're actually doing while listening to your music.
Yeah.
Like what are some examples?
Man, too many. I've heard literally people say smoke people to my music, pull robberies, blasted enemies, just put in work, just every form of gangbanging that you could do to my music, they've done it.
Yeah, I've interviewed No Malice from the Clips.
Yeah.
Formerly Malice.
Yeah.
And he said that the reason why he changed his name and kind of became Christian and started doing a different types of music, because those were like, the poster boys for drug dealer rap.
Straight up.
Essentially. But he said that he started thinking about how many people have smoked someone's head off while listening to the Clips.
Can you imagine how many people went to jail listening to the things that I said? Forget everybody else, and other rappers and other groups. Think about how many times people got pulled over, went to jail, my record playing in the car. Think about how many times somebody's head was blown out, and the theme music still playing or whatever. Because I know I liked who I listened to and wash my car to it, pump my gas in it, and it was just the theme music to my life. So you create that vibe. You definitely create that vibe. This isn't an opinion. This isn't, trying to rap shame or anything like that. This is truth.
When you hear like, yeah, I killed someone while bumping Mr. Criminal, how did that make you feel?
Makes me feel like I gotta change. I gotta make a difference. It's like it don't feel good, I'll tell you that. It's like it makes you wake up a side of your conscience. It's like, man, this is really happening. Like, you don't realize the power that you really have with these lyrics and your music and the following that people actually follow. It really hits you a different way.
Well, right, because you're not doing that anymore. You are now a rapper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you're not, obviously you're still affiliated, but you're not actively
For sure.
banging at this time, but you're still rapping about it.
Yeah.
You're still telling these tales, and people are soaking it up.
Yeah.
And using it as a battery in their back to do some of the stuff that they're doing.
For sure.
And it started to bother you.
Big time.
Okay. What'd you do about that?
Started making a change consciously in my music. I started approaching the way I make music differently. I started approaching the way I write differently, the way I deliver, the way I carry myself, the way I conduct myself when I ask questions in interviews. The whole nine. I just feel like the responsibility is a little heavier now, and I don't want people coming up to me and telling me that. I want people to come up to me and tell me positive things like I'm starting to get now. I had a girl that came up to me at one of my meet and greets the other day, and we were just about to shut down. It was in Santa Ana, and we were just about to shut down. It was past the time, and she ran in. She was dressed as a nurse, and she's like, all out of breath. She's like, I just had to come. I got off work early, and she told me that basically she was at a position where she had a kid young, and they told her she couldn't do what she wanted to do in life, and that she was going to be nothing, and on welfare, stuck the whole nine. And she said that I don't remember what song I had, but one of my songs really influenced her, and she said she played it, and she put herself through college, and she was a nurse now, and she's living her dream, and that's the type of interaction I love to hear.
Yeah, like little stories like that definitely make it all worthwhile.
For sure.
You know, when I hear people say like we were talking about Vlad's talks before, I say, oh yeah, I changed my life around because of Vlad's talks, and
Yeah.
it makes you feel good that you've changed someone in a positive direction.
For sure.